Are you seeing children with white eyes? Children stolen by the Moogai. Sometimes we escape, sometimes we don't.
I'd like to celebrate the woman who's done the most to close this deal, Sarah Bishop.
Cheers.
Mummy!
Right, okay. She's bleeding, people. We've got a placental abruption. Hold it down.
She needs total rest. She died on that table. It's a miracle they're both still alive.
How are things at home? Just really tired. I suppose that's normal though. Isn't it? Where's your brother? Why did you do that?
I didn't.
Can I put some ochre around the place? You can't let the Moogai in.
Don't you listen to her, okay?
But Mummy...
She's just a crazy old lady.
Me. God!
A little girl, she's been telling me about a man, and he wants to take my kids. Fergus, do you believe me?
He's coming for them.
I don't know what's happening.
We're not running anymore. This is where we'll make our stand.
I am not going to leave my children.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Screen Watching Podcast. I'm Simon Foster. Few short films in the history of short films have made the sort of impact that the Moogai did a few years back. I remember being completely freaked out by it at a Tropfest screening, if I remember correctly. Now Jon Bell, the director, the writer, has a chance to expand upon his initial ideas with the feature film adaptation of the Moogai, and he joins us here now. Mate, thank you for joining us on Screen Watching, and congratulations on this very creepy film.
Oh, cheers, bros. Yeah, it's sort of, once you've seen something, like, you know, when you're making a film, once you've seen something 100 times or whatever, things aren't, you know, you go through this period where, oh, that is scary. Oh, no, it's not scary anymore. Is this still scary? You know, all these questions. So I don't know where I'm at now, but look, there are scares in there.
Oh, there's definitely scares in there. You can be rest assured of that. Tell us about the challenge of expanding the short film, a work that you'd put a lot of, you know, creative effort to and over the years, into that feature format. What did opening it up? What sort of opportunities did that afford you?
I mean, look, it is challenging, but it's if you give over to it, I always described it as, do you remember those cans? You know, when you have a can of drink and you didn't have you had the hole and the hole, the big hole and the little hole. Do you ever have those cans of drinks? Well, there was a can, yeah. And so,
that's right.
You know,
yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, if you just pop the big hole, you don't get any flow. So you got to sort of pop the little hole, and then, I don't know, if you can give your ego over to,
great analogy,
then you get some flow. And trying to, because I was just doing the feature version first, but then going back and doing the short film version, that the short film in a way kind of became like the strong, like the greatest hits of the feature script, the things that work the best in the feature script went back into the short. And so it was like the character of the little girl and a few other things that weren't initially in the short film that I discovered in the big one, came back and went in there. But, you know, then there was other bits that you kind of had to let go of.
Sure.
So, but at the same time, it's really revealing in terms of popping that little hole, if you can look at yourself and be critical of your own work, you know, seeing what you produce in a small version, seeing what you produce in a longer version, and seeing how you condense things down, it just really reveals a lot about your own technique or lack of it.
Sure, yeah. It's all up there on the screen, mate. You've done it. It's very few, whether they're adapting short stories or short films, make the leap as successfully as you have with the Moogai, and you've got to be congratulated on that. Working with this incredible lead actress in Shari Sebbens, she gets to play this vast range of emotions, whether it's as an Indigenous woman dealing with, you know, all the harsh imposed lifestyle choices she has to deal with, or whether it's her maternal angst that she's going through. It's an incredible role for an actress to play that you've created, and she comes to it with gusto. Tell us about the experience of working with her.
Oh, I've known Shari for, I don't know, probably, I think maybe 2012, she worked on a series that I created for ABC, The Gods of Wheat Street, and I've known her for a while now. I think the Sapphires might have just come out around that time. So, you know, the Indigenous film industry is pretty small, so most of us know each other and know who's around and stuff. So I knew of her certainly from that, but working with her in The Gods of Wheat Street, I could see how much, like, she's so talented, man. Like, she's immensely agile, and she's immensely, like, in the short film, when she is laying on the ground and Sarah has kind of broken her back from the accident and she's going to die, and the Moogai comes in and it's taking the baby, and she's calling out, you know, don't take my baby and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, look, it was just before the light came up, and everybody, you know, everybody was like tired as, and me and the producers were sitting behind the monitor and we were tearing up because it was so powerful. And this performance she was giving, and then she stopped in the middle of it and said, John, do you want this other phrase? Do you want me to do this other word? And I was just like shocked at how, you know, I thought she was in it, but she was acting, you know, because she's an actress. And I've done a bit of acting, but, you know, like, it's not the same as what she can do. She's doing it. She does
she's very much the heart and soul of this film, as her character should be, of course. But it reminded me of some of the great sort of mothers in horror movies, like Jo Beth Williams in Poltergeist, or those sort of performances where up against this supernatural force, their boldest, barest instincts are maternal, and it makes for a deeply emotional performance. We can't forget that this is it's a creature feature too. Tell us about the origins of the Moogai, both in Indigenous culture, but also then let's talk about what you did with the guys at Makeup Effects Group in creating the look of the film. First of all, come from a cultural background on the Moogai.
They're like Aboriginal monsters. You know, there's such a history with sort of like vampires or Frankenstein or some of these cinematic creatures, monsters, and Aboriginal monsters in many ways just come from a different point of view, in almost something that's more akin to like the xenomorphs in Alien or something, you know, like the way that these creatures might interact with us, the humans, is not just as deformed humans, but it's as a completely different species that has its own point of view. Like in terms of the xenomorphs kind of being born from this paranoid fear of penetration or like insects that, you know, use another insect as something to incubate their young. The Moogai itself, the creature, the concept there is that this creature is essentially practicing animal husbandry upon us, the humans, in the same way that we might treat chickens, and that's why the chickens are in there, sort of just our relationship to the egg, the human relationship to chickens. Do the chickens ever look at us and go, well, who are you taking my eggs? Do they think we're gods? Do they think we're thieves? What do they think we are? And
I think we're monsters, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're monsters. And so, the way that the Moogai relates to Sarah, in essence, is sort of that, it's been preying on this family line for, a millennia. And this particular Moogai itself might be 1,000 years old or something. But the species of the Moogai has been plaguing mankind since, we came down out of the trees. Like it's an ancient thing. And the notion of it manifests to us as evil. In and of itself, it has its own point of view. In many ways, for Sarah, it's an agent of change. And then the stuff with Meg.
Yeah, I was going to say the two-faced look of the Moogai. It's extraordinarily striking image when it comes on screen. It's a real achievement from the guys there at Meg, Nick, and the team who I know well.
Yeah, well, like I had a good yarn with them, and we were talking about a bunch of different things that I had in my head, which was like Rocky Horror Picture Show. The lad who sings the Time Warp. I can't remember his name, but that dude, because he's a freaky looking bloke. Riff-Raff. And then he's got the hair, and he's a freaky looking bloke. And then the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was another one that,
oh my God,
was sort of terrifying, and there's a little head that comes out in The Thing with Kurt Russell. When the Thing it changes into this, it transforms into this creature, and there's this like little face on the front of this. It's sort of, there's this little face on this tentacle thing. That face I always found super, super creepy. And then one of the other ones was Tim Curry's character in Legend, Darkness.
Of course, yeah.
So that was kind of an inspiration for the underface. And then The Thing was kind of an inspiration for the top face. Certainly, like the two-face quality of it. Well, and it was, it's all these sort of 80s films that burrowed, or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, I suppose, earlier than that. But these things kind of burrowed into, I think, our collective brains for us who'd seen those films from that era. But they're deeply bloody creepy. Like they're deeply, when you look back on some of those films that we watched, you'd never get away with it now. You couldn't show that to young people. It was just like, this is not a musical. This is a horror film. But all of those kinds of things, and then his hands, he's got the long fingers, so he's got that sort of not the actual, the face hugger in Alien. I always just think that little thing is so creepy. And my as a kid, my old man used to work at the fish markets in Sydney at Glebe, and he used to bring home crabs. I was like a toddler, and he'd live crabs, and he'd let them run around. They still had their pincers tied up, but he let them run around the floor. It was terrifying, man. They crawl around and you hear them on the floor and stuff. And so there's something freaky about those fingers.
How important, clearly the underlying themes and the message, as with all great horror films, there's a message in amongst the narrative, in amongst the frights. The story of the stolen generation, the shadow that it casts over Australian society, white society, but finding the balance in the message you're telling and the scares you need to provide. Tell us about that challenge. Tell us about the mission you're on there.
Look, there's a few different, I guess there's two different films that are running at the same time. If you're into the horror, then the notion of an unstoppable force that you need to try and find some knowledge or some sort of, you need to try and find some way around, that's going to resonate in terms of horror fans. It's not like, blood and guts kind of film, but there are scares in there. There are things that are creepy, and then there's tension in there. But you know, there's also laughs and there's also a lot of heart in the story. And then in terms of the themes of the film, the notion of the government preying on all of us, or having, like I was saying about the Moogai, having a point of view on all of us and not taking our own points of view into account and treating us unfairly, that's also a pretty universal kind of feeling. And for the stolen generations in particular, those kinds of practices don't really ever leave your being. Like, there's always a fear of someone or something trying to take your children. That's you know, that's a natural thing, even if you're just with your kids at a shopping mall or something, you know, just when you're in public, that's with you. So that's kind of multiplied by sort of the government's decisions and practices over the years.
Mate, you've made an extraordinary film. I'm hoping it does the business that it deserves to do at the Australian box office and travels the world, which it already has to much acclaim. Jon Bell, thank you so much for joining us on the Screen Watching podcast, and congratulations on the film.
Oh, thanks, brother. I really appreciate that. Like, we don't know what it'll do, but, you know, I think it's going to resonate with people.
I think it is too. Thank you, mate. All the very best.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.